Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Spirits, where we take you on a journey to discover and unveil spirituality and healing. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and click the notification bell to find out when I upload videos and also when I go live. And we've got a very special guest here tonight. This is our second guest in our Conversations with Spirit podcast, and her name is Stacey from the Bejewelled podcast. Stacey is a published blogger and a podcaster in the alternative media scene. She is the host of the Bejewelled podcast, which delves into topics from the law of attraction to MK Ultra. In addition to the podcast, she also runs a blog that publishes new material almost daily. She is a business analyst by background, which gives her the foundation for research, development, and execution. She charts new territory in unknown waters by hosting a myriad of guests with diversified belief systems, theories, and formal backgrounds. So welcome, Stacey, to Conversations with Spirit. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, John. That was awesome. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. It's not very often that I get to sit on this side of the microphone.
I know, right? It's cool. It's cool. I like it.
No, I love it. It's cool.
I like being on this side too.
Awesome.
In a more like professional way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'll say hi real quick to everybody that's in the chat. Ellie, Diana is in here. Hey, Danny, how's it going? Michelle and Jess, welcome in, you guys. So I wanted to, go into the chat. And so I wanted to start with, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your journey that got you to where you are right now regarding like the Bejewelled podcast, because that's something that I'm fascinated about. And I've seen all of your episodes and everything that you've, all the topics that you've explored are basically like topics that I just absolutely love. So what got you to create this Bejewelled podcast?
That's a really great question. I'm not sure that it has one answer, but I will try my best to answer it. So I've been blogging for a really long time. So I've always liked to write, and it was always really kind of my outlet. I always like to journal, things like that. And I decided that with the way technology is changing and the way that people receive their information, that I wanted to take my blogging and my journaling and all that to a format in which it was easy for people in our culture today to be able to absorb. So it's really hard these days to read something. You either have to have it read to you, or you really have to carve out some time in your schedule to do that. So what could I do that could help people that is easy to get to them? So to me, I'm like, well, podcasts. I mean, those are up and coming. They're very trendy. And I knew that as soon as I did a podcast, I would be able to do it both in an audio format, and I would just be recording myself doing the podcast so it could go to YouTube. So it was kind of like killing two birds with one stone kind of thing.
Right.
And it's funny because, my background prior to this was one that I'm going to say superficial, because in the grand scheme of things, it was pretty superficial, but I was pursuing a life of plus size modeling, and I was signed with an agency out of Atlanta.
Wow.
And all of that fell into place. And I was doing a lot of blogging for companies, fashion companies, bathing suit companies, things like that. And so that was kind of like the start. That was the start of the platform, building social media, stuff like that. And somewhere along the lines of 29 or 30, at age 29 or 30, I had my awakening.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided that while modeling was something I always thought that I wanted to do, it was the starting point for me to get to where I'm at right now. And I don't regret it or anything like that, because it taught me a lot of lessons. And I just decided that for me personally, that I wanted to have more of an impact than just being, photographs on a page. And so this kind of, yes, I mean, like if we are calling it what it is, that's what I went. That's why I say it's superficial. It's a lot of fun. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love photo shoots. In fact, I have a photo shoot this weekend. So I didn't stop doing it, but my focus and my platform is definitely this. And I wanted to make an impact on the world. I have always believed in these things. I've always been interested in these things, but the very young, naive me wouldn't ever talk about those things because I was afraid of the judgment.
Right.
So when I got over myself, that's when I kind of opened up and I just said, you know what? I don't need to be afraid of the world's judgment of me. Like, truth will always find a way. It's always going to win out. And that's what I decided for me.
Did you always, like, when you were little, did you always have this desire to like know more? Because I know like a lot of the themes of what you do on your podcast are like diving deeper, you know, like ancient knowledge or like, you know, past knowledge. And these are things that I think right now a lot of us are waking up to, and the world really needs to hear this kind of stuff, especially if you're just like awakening, or if you're just kind of coming into that phase that you just talked about, that you had to like that you moved into, and it created this change or this shift in your life that you're like, okay, now I'm going in a different direction. Have you always had that desire to know more than what just meets the eye?
Yes. And I don't think that's a very surprising trait for an Aquarius. And especially because I have a grand trine in air. So I live in the clouds.
Right.
It's very hard for me to get down to earth. But yeah, just from a young age, I've always had some form of clairvoyance. And I've always been able to see things in the spirit realm. And, you know, I didn't talk a whole lot about that, especially, you know, with my upbringing. I was brought up very conservative Christian. And while all those things are very real things, it's not things that you really wanted to encourage. So if you start talking about seeing demons and stuff, it's like, okay, well, let's have an exorcism. Like, you know, so I just didn't talk about it, even though it was prevalent in my life. So yeah, I would say that my thirst and curiosity for knowledge has been there since day one, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, for me too, and I've always felt very different than the rest of my family. Like I've always had this like kind of intuition or this inkling that like, this is not it. Like there's so much more. And it wasn't until, you know, probably the same as you, maybe. So I'm trying to remember, like when I moved here to Boulder, I was only like 23. And that was the initial like beginning of kind of like a tower, like a huge tower moment in my life. Yes. Yeah. And so, but it took me like a long time. It took me years to get to a place where I'm finally like now I know, now I know there's so much more, and I'm confident in it. And I believe in myself, and I believe in my ability to sort of also receive that knowledge, like intuitively, you know? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. You also, so I love that you say this in your podcast. You say that you're bestowing gems of wisdom. Now, what is your idea of a gem of wisdom? What made you come up with that little tagline?
So, I mean, I was really blessed by the cosmic arena with a pretty kick-ass name. So my real name is Stacey Jewell. I mean, that's not an alias or anything. Cool. So I knew that I wanted to do something with my name because I'm proud of my name. And, you know, I feel like it really describes my personality. So I'm like, what could I do with Jewel and like kind of have a play on words, because I'm super punny and just like nerdy like that. So I'm like, yeah, gems of truth. So like, you know, for each of us, truth is a little different. Like what they see as a personal truth, I may not see as a personal truth. But the thing is I think at some point or another, we can all meet on a middle ground somewhere. I might have something in my episode that resonates with you, but maybe 95% of it didn't, but 5% of it did. So that was a gem of truth for you or whoever's watching it. And, you know, it's hard because some of the hardest truths on this earth are going to come from these topics that we're talking about. And when you start challenging people's belief systems, it's going to get deep real fast. And people are going to have things that happen inside of them, especially in their hearts, that are going to cause them to kind of question everything. And like, that's the thing with truth. The path to truth is generally not the easiest one. It's really easy to be complacent and just stick your head in the sand and be a part of the matrix and do what you're supposed to do every day. But it takes a lot of soul. It takes a lot of searching to go deep for those answers. And that's what I wanted to do with this podcast. I wasn't interested in being surface, because these are things that could change people's lives. And why not? Why not expose them? Why not talk about them?
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's this is more, you could call it a trend, but I really feel like it's more than just a trend. This is something, this is like a shift, like a planetary shift. And I'm sure you've heard the idea of light workers and star seeds, and you probably identify with that as well yourself. And I feel like a lot of people that do identify with having this sort of purpose of bringing more light to the world have this desire to like let people know, or like speak your truth. And that this word truth, you mention it, it's like gems of wisdom, but it's really like this, like, let's speak the truth, and it's so interesting because we've heard that word like so many times in our lives, especially like I grew up Catholic, so I grew up like being told that, sinning was bad, and, this was good and this was wrong. And I never felt really comfortable in that setting. I never felt any kind of like connection with my heart when it came to that. So it never like clicked for me. I never felt like that was truth. But when I did officially like find my truth, I felt it in like every cell of my being. It was it was like a complete like energetic physical experience. It wasn't just someone told me and then I got the words or from a book or whatever, and then I was like, okay, that's true. It was like a full on like blown experience of truth. Have you ever had experiences like that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, and in this day and age, I kind of tend to believe that if it's not doing something radical inside of me, then it's not for me. Because I'm not interested in watered down truths. And, I took it was a big journey for me. And this isn't going to be everybody's truth. So let me just say that this is my personal journey, that I have a big issue with religion because it's based on legalism and not really a relationship or anything like that. And ultimately it's about control. And, we're very smart beings. We have cosmic knowledge. We are just beautiful beings. And we don't need that stuff to guide us. We have our own internal guidance. And so like for me, when I started questioning religion, like that's when like radical things started changing in me. Because I got off those narratives that I had been saying my whole life. And I actually stopped to listen to another perspective. So the old me, the young me would say, this is my truth and I'm not going to listen to yours, but I'm going to shove mine down your throat. And that's just really arrogant, because we all learn something from each other. And that's the thing is, I think a lot of the times, while I am interested in being light, that is my goal here. But you know what? The thing is that light has to be in duality with darkness. So it's like the one doesn't have any significance or meaning without the other.
Yeah.
So, and as much as we have to embrace our light, we also have to embrace our shadow, because that is when we truly live, when the two are in harmony. And like, that's the thing that I've been kind of really working on. Just, life makes us really hard. And life is hard because we have all these different elements that are thrown at us, and we're just trying to wade through and be a successful human being and live our best life and be kind to others. But somewhere along the process, we can get jaded. And I know for me personally that I've had to work on my heart, and I'm just beginning to work on my heart because I was so closed off to the idea. And it's hard. I was talking with a friend and I literally sent the meme today of when the Grinch's heart grows and he falls on the ground and he goes, oh my God, I'm feeling like that's how I've had to be. And it's an interesting awakening, but I wouldn't, and all of our life experience brings us to this point right now. So don't get me wrong. I don't regret anything, but do we ever grow? Do we ever change if we keep on living that same narrative? And that's where I'm like, you know what? Nope, we're going to abandon that stuff. We're going to start from scratch, and you're going to figure out what you believe because you tested it and you learned, not because somebody told you to do it.
Right. I totally agree with you on that one. 100%. I know that unless we truly step into, actually, there's a word that you called it on your last episode that I was just recently watching. You called it spiritual maturity.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that word. If you don't mind telling the listeners a little bit about what you mean by that word, because I actually loved the way that you said it.
Yes. What was I responding to with him? What was the surrounding context? Do you remember?
I can't remember, but it was similar to the conversation that we're having right now about how we go through, spiritual awakenings, but then there's a certain point where we can even get like almost like spiritual bypassing, almost like where we get into this, like stuck in this rut of thinking that we got it right, even in like the new age. I think you guys were talking about the new age.
Yeah.
And then you said, well, there's a difference between, this and spiritual maturity. And so like when somebody steps into more of a spiritual mature way, like that, until then it's like hasn't really like set in, the truth of it.
I think it just came to me. So I talk about spiritual maturity a lot in terms of when we were talking about setting intentions and manifesting and things of that nature.
Right. Yes, that's right.
Because when you first start manifesting, when you figure out that the mind has so much power and that you literally can create your own reality before you, I think that when we all first start out, we have some pretty superficial things that we start trying to manifest, whether it be like $1 million or a Lamborghini or some dumb crap. Like it doesn't even matter. Like, you do that and like, maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But when you get down the line, and this is why I'm such an advocate for journaling, because you can physically see your growth in written word. So if I were to go to my journal, page 1 of manifesting, because I keep a manifesting journal, it's just like, it's all stuff that just like, man, Stace, like, could you have gone a little deeper? Like you weren't trying very hard. And now it's like things that have to do with like, I don't ever want to do anything except for promote like harmony and peace with people, like all this just stuff that is for the well-being of others. I think when you take yourself out of your manifesting, when you start trying to manifest things for the greater good, I think you have a heart change when that happens, because it's not really about us. Because if you think about it, we are all in one with each other. So if you do something for the collective, you are ultimately doing something for you as well. And when you step outside of yourself and you put others before you, that's when the dynamic change happens. So if you're new to manifesting or you've never done it before, like I really encourage you to do the journal part, because you will grow before your own eyes. You will impress even yourself. And that's kind of what I was talking about with spiritual maturity, is that as you get older, and maybe not even older in age, just as you grow in wisdom, your priorities will change. And I think that's what your youth is for making those mistakes and just kind of living by, flying by the seat of your pants kind of thing. And then you grow up and you're like, you know what? I got bigger fish to fry here. Like, and you just kind of get over it. You get over yourself.
Oh my God. Like I got chills when you were saying that. I mean, that is beautiful. I've never actually quite said it that way. I'm going to use that word now. Like I'm going to use that spiritual maturity, because I like that word way better than when we talk about like spiritual bypassing. I really don't like that word, because I do feel like it exists, but it just feels like such a negative thing. And I think what it's getting towards is the fact that we get to a point where we actually truly understand what is the most important thing in life. Like we understand like what we value and why, and then what we ask for and what we want in life just completely changes, because we literally to me, it's almost like, I like talking about portals. That's like my fascination. To me, it's like we step through a portal into a higher state of awareness or a higher consciousness. And so it's like these sort of stages of like waking up, but then you wake up again, and then you wake up again, and then you wake up again, and you kind of keep going through the process. It's almost like I'm recording my July videos because I'm going to be in Argentina for 2 weeks getting married. And
congrats.
yeah, thank you. And in all of those videos, what's coming up, because July is eclipse season, is this revolutionary energy. And that's what eclipses do. And they literally are portals. And so when you're in a spiritual journey, like, when I was younger, it's like eclipses would come and go. And then I would be like, oh my God, the eclipse came. It's like, everybody put on your glasses. And oh my God, that was so cool. And that's like, that's it, like when you're little. And then you get older, and there's so many times where I look back and I'm like, no wonder, like I was going through some intense stuff in my life. And then when I look back, I'm like, well, of course, like that was the eclipse season of that, or that was the eclipse season of that. But it really, all of those awakenings, all of those places where we step through portals, we end up on the other side. And then there's more to learn and more to learn. It's almost like this infinite space. But I feel like every time you get a little closer to that, like spiritual maturity.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's so refreshing to find people that are at that place in their lives, because it can definitely feel like a lonely journey when everyone around, when you're the only one like standing, and everyone around you, you know what I mean, is like asleep, like zombies almost.
Zombies, 100%. That's a perfect analogy.
It's crazy, but that's like totally how it feels. So, yeah, just awesome word. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the topics that you've covered in your podcast. And is there one topic that has been, or one interview so far that has been sort of like your favorite? And maybe why? Or one topic that just like, oh my God, you just like, when we're going to talk about that, I just get lit up.
Man, that's tough because especially because I'm in 25 episodes in. So I feel like I've picked all the heavy hitters in the beginning here. Right. So, I mean, for me, I really enjoy, I'll tell you one of my favorite episodes in terms of a research perspective. I loved researching about remote viewing. And I had been doing that before I started the podcast. So I was dabbling in that. So it was easy for me to make that into a podcast because it was already an interest. But to learn the history and whatnot, and just the fact that it's 100% possible, and like all these things that just seem like
it's crazy, but I actually don't know what that is. Will you tell us?
I would love to tell you.
I'm like, what the heck is remote viewing?
Yes. So remote viewing is more from, I'm going to say it's more of the militaristic approach. It's different than astral travel. So I don't want to say that they're the same, but kind of a similar concept. So but in astral travel, you actually physically leave, your soul physically leaves your body and you can go wherever you want to go. So with remote viewing, kind of think of it more as like you're a surveillance camera. So you're a drone. That's actually probably a better analogy. So you can go and you can see things that are happening in real time. You can remote view the past too. And I mean, there's plenty of people that do that. But so remote viewing was a project and a program of the United States military. And basically the Russians were working with consciousness and whatnot. And when we found out that they were doing it, we had to jump into the consciousness race. So the United States military set up a whole program and trained people on remote viewing. There's a bunch of processes that you go through to be able to do it. Different people have different approaches. Some approaches are more spiritualistic and some are more methodical, I guess would be a good word. So it just kind of depends on what resonates with you. I learned from Prudence Calabrese, and her stuff is on YouTube, and it's several hours, but she offers it for free. And the cool thing is while we are all very special in our own way, at the time, I didn't think that there was anything special about me. Like I didn't consider myself a medium or psychic or anything of that nature. I was just Stacey, and I was going to try this out. So I started remote viewing with the tactics that I learned, and I was accurate to the point of like 95%. And that kind of just blew my mind because to me, I didn't have anything special to be able to do that. But as I learned later on, going through these podcasts and interviewing people, I mean, to say we're not special is a lie, because we are incredible creatures, incredible. So like that one was really cool for me, because I kind of blew my own mind with it. So from a research perspective, that one was really interesting for me. I've had so many fascinating guests. And you know what, the beautiful thing is that I have asked people that are big names in the alternative community, and some of them have said yes. So it's just
so
like,
cool. I was going to ask you about that. Like, how do you do that part of it? Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, what's your process of getting people to respond to you when, you know what I mean? When you're like wanting people to actually get on your podcast.
So I would love to answer that, because, you know, Jess, who's with Multiverse Maiden, that's her channel. Her and I have a group together. It's called The Fam, and it's females of alternative media podcasting. And we're gonna change it, because we don't want to limit it just down to females, because we want to help males too. But the thing is that we want to be able to help anybody that wants to get into podcasting. We want to tell them what to do, what not to do, how to troubleshoot this, because it's a hard industry to navigate by yourself. And the thing with podcasting is, unless you're a really big company and you have all the resources or whatnot, you have to be the talent, the editor, you know this, you have a YouTube channel, you have to be everything in one. And not naturally, at some point or another, we're not going to be good at some element in it. So Jess and I really took it as a mission upon ourselves to be able to create a group where people felt like they had somebody that they could ask. So we're trying to get that off the ground. But all that to say, so how do I ask people to come on the show? So with anything in life, I feel like authenticity is always going to be your best approach. So if people sense from you that you're your truly authentic self, that energy is going to resonate with them. And you can't fake energy. Like, you know, when somebody's a good person, you know, when you're like, I'm just not going to be going near that person. Like, you can't fake that. So to be authentic in your ask, to me, is the only way to do it. And people are generally very responsive. They'll be like, you know, thank you so much for asking me. I just can't right now. I don't have the time in my schedule. Most people will answer you in some way, shape, or form. And then it's some of them that you're like, okay, this person's never going to say yes, but we're just going to throw it out there in the ether. And then they say yes. And you're like, what just happened? Like, so for me, one of those, I've had a few of them, but one of those for me was James Barrett. So James Barrett just came on the pod. I think it was 3 episodes ago. James Barrett wrote Our Final Invention. And it's basically about how artificial intelligence could be the end of the human era. He has directed and written documentaries for National Geographic, the Travel Channel, BBC, like all of these huge names. I had to pursue him for a couple months because, you know, I don't stop pursuing until somebody tells me to back off. That's the Aquarius in me. So I had to pursue, but ultimately he said yes. And he came on and it was an awesome interview. And like, for me, that's like a wow moment that I have 155 YouTube subscribers. Okay. So not very many. And he said yes to me. And that's where, you know, Jess and I talk about this a lot, that if your mission is really truth, and showing people the light and trying to help them find a better version of themselves, then it shouldn't matter how many subscribers I have, how many people I have on my Instagram. None of that truly matters, because in the end, the truth matters. And how we connect with one another matters. So, and I think when you are doing things for the right reasons, those energy forms will find you. Like, you don't have to beg for them, because that is the thing. The beauty of frequency and vibration is that when you put the vibe out there, the universe is going to send you one back to match. And when it's authentic, you're going to get what you want.
I love that. Oh, I just love that. And I totally agree with it. I feel like I deal with that as well too. Sometimes it's like, there's a vision and there's always this desire to reach for more, and not in like material gain or anything like that, but like to reach more people, to like get the word out, to like, you know what I mean? And so there are moments where you feel like, you know, a fish in a sea of a million fish, you know, and you're like, what am I doing? And those feelings of insecurity kind of come up. every once in a while. I'm sure you experience that as well. But when I always come back to like, why am I doing this? Like, what is my purpose? The universe always just sends love, right? Like this feeling of love that like encompasses, and you feel like, okay, everything's okay. And, you know, just keep moving forward. That's amazing. Yeah.
When we get in our heart space, when we get out of our head and into our heart, that's where the magic happens every time. And it's, you know, like these concepts are simple, but acting these concepts out is rather difficult. Like I said, you know, based on my planetary alignment, I'm in my head a lot. So for me, it's hard to get out of my head, and it's very difficult for me to get into my heart. But amazing things happen when you come from the heart.
Yeah. I feel like also another thing that kind of plays a key role in it is definitely like your intention. You know, it's like what you're putting out there, but not just like consciously, but also subconsciously, because I think a lot of times we will sort of want something and it doesn't happen, and we're like, why isn't it happening? And then we don't realize that we're actually like kind of preventing it because we haven't actually dealt with the things that really need to be dealt with. And I think that's why the universe always brings you, you know, situations to keep clearing, like, okay, now you did that work, okay, well, here's the next, and here's the next, and here's the next. And when you get to a point where you realize that it's really just a journey, like there really is no end. It's just like you came here to do as much as you can, and like just by doing something, like that's enough, you know, like that's good enough. And you know, like, and I'm a firm believer. Like I started like a while ago believing in light workers. It was like maybe 4 years ago or 3 or 4 years ago where I read my first light worker book. It was called Light Worker by Savannah Arienta. And she talks about the different types of light workers. It's like this like basic understanding of light workers. And since then, I've received so much more information. And since then, I've seen so many more people like doing things like what you do with the Bejewelled podcast, which is like stowing gems of wisdom. You know what I mean? It's like I've seen a lot of people like are doing this now because I think they're connecting, and they're really truly like they're honing in on what their purpose is, and like that they really, really want to get this one specific message out. And so they'll write a book or they'll create a YouTube channel. And I feel like that's the seeding, like that's the seeds that keep coming. Those are like, you know, the star seeds. And there's more and more and more and more. And I'm feeling like what's really going on is we're interconnecting in this like energetic web around the globe, and like creating this energetic like stream that people can like start to plug into, and that takes them to that place, like to that truth.
Yes, and we're living in a vastly different time than I would say even 10 years ago. I mean, we see the stuff that's happening all around us. The veil is certainly thinning. The frequencies are changing. Like we're waking up because reality is literally breaking down. And all of these structures, all of these constructs that we had are coming to the end of their cycle. And people are waking up and saying, you know what, that just doesn't quite make sense. And this is a really exciting time to be alive. I cannot wait to see how this pans out. And that's the beautiful thing about learning who you are, your purpose, where you came from, is that we are all energy, and we will forever be energy in different forms. And when you embrace that, you lose fear, because nothing can happen to you. Yes, maybe something can happen to your 3D construct, but you are always going to be energy. And when you embrace that, you can live life totally free of fear, which means you can live in absolute freedom.
I freaking love that. And it does. Like just you saying that, when I imagined it, it was like, it did feel like I could finally take a breath. That's like the energy of that brings you.
Yeah, I'm reading an incredible book right now. And his name is George Kavasilis, and he has a quote that has literally been in my head all week, and I can't get it out. And he said, "We are the sum total of our experience." Let me just think about that. We are the sum total of our experience. So every experience we've ever had, be it negative or positive, is making up our soul essence. So it is feeding us a lesson in which we can learn from and move forward. And like, we're just going to keep constantly learning and gleaning and becoming the best versions of our highest self. And like, that's a really cool thing to think about, that no matter what experience you've been through, it is moving you towards your greater good.
Yeah, totally. There was another question that I wanted to ask you about, like the research that you do to come up with like the topics that you actually want to cover. And also what originally made you want to like really start doing more and more research into these topics.
So that's a great question. I think it's a really, really valid one, because you have different schools of people who you're trying to connect with. So you have people that resonate more so with the spiritual realm and spiritualist concepts. And then you have people that are more of a methodical, analytical mind. So you have your scientists and things like that. So there are some topics that I talk about that absolutely have zero science behind them, because it can't be measured by human constructs. So those things are difficult, but I don't think that means we can't talk about them. And then there are things that are completely measurable, like sacred geometry. That's math. It's the universal language. You can't dispute it. And so those kind of things, I mean, when it's something that's, irrefutable, that's pretty easy to research. And of course, there's going to be varying opinions, varying studies. But, just because we come across topics that maybe we can't explain to the definitive from our perspective, because we are of limited knowledge, I think it doesn't mean that we can't talk about those things. Now, of course, we're theorizing. We don't want to say something is absolute truth when we don't know that. But the point is let's just talk about it, because this is what, we have brainstorming sessions a lot, me and a few other podcasters, and we could talk for hours about theories and concepts and whatnot. But the point is, like, it doesn't matter whether or not we have science or not to prove that at that particular point. Let's just talk about it, because up until this point, we haven't talked about it. And that's half the problem. So these things have been hidden in plain sight from us and been taboo to discuss because of whatever elite construct is out there that doesn't want us to know these things. So if we would have been talking about these things 100 years ago, we would probably be in a much different position than we are now. But now you have people that are trying to find their own personal truth. They're trying to wade through truths that the media throws at them and that the government throws at them. And we don't know if they're truth. And so you have just a lot of questions right now. And this is all part of a grand plan. Don't get me wrong. This is done purposefully. But the point is that I feel like people need to have a platform where they can come and have a discussion free of judgment. And you know what? We don't have to agree, but let's respect one another, because that we at least owe that to each other. And I think that's the really cool thing about the community that I hang with. Now, of course, in every community, there's going to be some bad apples, but for the most part, we're very accepting of one another. And that's refreshing, because we live in a world that doesn't accept very often.
No, I love that. I've also found community in places where I least expected it too. That's another thing that comes to you as like, once you step into, the unknown and you start to live life with more awareness or more, spiritual or conscious awareness of how the universe works and why we're here and all of that. I think it starts to connect you to your soul tribe. Like, and I firmly believe that when we start to step into our power, our spirituality, we start to find our soul tribe. And the people like that watch this channel very much feel like that. To me. And this is like something that I'm looking forward to building, this community, because I also feel like you connect with the people that you most connect with, like that you vibrate with on a level that is kind of where you're at. And then that kind of helps you grow together.
Absolutely. Jess and I say this all the time, and it's 100% true, is that we love our internet family so much more than our own like physical friends and family.
Oh my God. I agree with you.
what's the odds of you resonating with somebody that's in your geographical location to the deepest level that say, you and I do, because we're into the same things and we find each other because we're finding each other based on the similar attributes that we share.
Right.
You may or may not get that in your geographical location, but I can tell you that like I rush home to be able to talk to my internet friends because I feel like they get me. And I feel like a lot of my family and friends do not get me. Like it's hard.
100%. I'm right there too. It's like I've had to, I just talked about it today in one of my videos where like I've had to completely move on as if like those people are not part of my life anymore.
Yep.
Because they're really not.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no need, like just because society says like, oh, well, that's your blood family. And those people like are like, should be in your life because they're blood family. Like actually, unless people can be like respectful of each other in the way that I choose to be with, like, I will be respectful if you're respectful to me kind of energy.
Yeah.
But I feel like unless that's there, and that's there in Soul Tribe for sure, but unless that's there, I don't feel like you should have to have any kind of relationship with anyone, even if whether they are family or not. You know?
Toxic is toxic. It doesn't matter about the DNA strand. I mean, if something's toxic in your life, then you have to make a decision at your point. You're going to send that person in love, but they don't have to be in your life. And it's incredibly painful these days to have surface level conversations. So if I have to, and it's funny because I can't even talk about the weather unadulterated because like I'm dealing with topics of where it's geoengineered. So like we can't even talk about the weather because there's things happening to it that like my mind just can't even, So it's these days, it's just tough to even just have a surface level conversation. It's painful because at this point in time is limited. We have things that we need to be talking about. Ain't nobody got time for that.
I love that. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I'm like, when I have to make this is one of the reasons why I hate going out in public.
Yep.
But being here, like online and on the internet, being able to express myself and talk about the things that I'm actually interested in, like totally changes the energy. But when I do have to go and have these like, conversations with people like that, they're just on the surface and, it's just like filler.
Yes.
It really can get like, oh my God.
It's exhausting.
It makes me be like, but it's weird too though, because I know that there's some people where like you'll be having these kind of conversations with, but you can tell that they're just trying to like you're both just trying to be like, I'm not really going to go that deep because you know what I mean? It's like, but you can tell that you're both like wanting, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm talking about.
No, I completely understand. You're trying to stay on neutral territory because you don't want to get in the fights or you don't want to get in the, just the petty stuff. And like, but it's hard because as much of these painful conversations that have to take place in our daily life, you might get an opportunity with somebody that is curious. And if I sense any level of curiosity, I share with them what they want to know. This is the thing for me right now that I think is probably the hardest thing is that it's not part of my soul contract because, I believe in soul contracts. It's not part of my soul contract to screw up somebody's worldview. Like I don't want that. I don't want that blood on my hands. But if you're naturally curious and you want to know more, I am not going to hold back either. So if I feel like somebody has that curiosity there, great, let's have a conversation. If you want to keep your head in the sand and you want to do your everyday things and do your grocery shopping and pick your kid up from school, that's fine. You're entitled to that. And we'll just keep that way. But but I don't want to shut down talking to our everyday people either, because you never know what's dormant in somebody's heart. Because if nobody would have stopped to talk to me when I was at the peak of my ridiculousness, with my superficialness, would I have changed? Would I have changed? So it's as much as it can be painful. I think we also all look for that spark of curiosity because you could change somebody's life.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how somehow this internet world is connecting? Okay. So I know that some people look at like social media and, the internet as this like, oh, it disconnects you. Like that, there's this thing about it where like people are like, no, screw social media because it actually it disconnects you. And I'm like, actually, I disagree with that. And I'm kind of curious as to what you think about it, because I feel like I've made more connections online. And even though, no, I haven't like met a lot of these people in person, like there is a freaking connection, and connection is not physical anyways.
Correct.
You know, it's energetic. So it's anyways, what are your thoughts about that?
So I have a love-hate relationship with social media. So I kind of go in cycles. Some days I want to delete everything, and then other days I'm like, oh, this is great. I wouldn't have met this person without this. So this is the thing with social media. And I really feel like I can talk to this coming from the place that I stood before the podcast. So the modeling aspect. As soon as social media gets you down about yourself, that is the point in time that you need to evaluate if it's the best thing for your soul. So when I moved away from social media as a platform to promote my modeling and moved it to my social media promotes a podcast, which is about something with purpose and greater authority, like my relationship with social media changed because I no longer signed into it to see how many likes I got on a personal photo of me. So it was doing a lot to my mind when I was in the modeling aspect with the likes, like, or comments, you know, well, why didn't this get 2,000 likes? You know, like just stupid stuff. Like nobody would have thought about this stuff 10 years ago. Like, this is dumb. So, but you know, we're such an instant gratification society that we need that validation. So like, that was the cool thing with the podcast is like, okay, well, this isn't about me anymore. This is about the greater good. And so like my mind healed from where it was going with social media. Because I do think that it can be detrimental, especially to our youth. You know, you're not spiritually or physically or anything mature when you're in that age bracket. Like your brain just is not fully developed. So to have kids as young as, I mean, like, what are these kids, like 4 and 5, and they have million YouTube subscribers and they're millionaires already? Like, I'm not sure that that's a great thing for them. I'm really not sure about that, but I'm not here to judge. You know, it's going to pay for their college. Great. So,
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because that instantly brought up for me, like, so you've heard of the Dolores Cannon, she's got a lot of books out, and she talks about the 3 waves of volunteers, where there's these 3 waves of volunteers that have come to the planet. And those are like what we know of as like light workers. And the 3rd wave that she talks about is actually these kids, and that she calls them the hope of the future, and that they are literally like causing huge shifts, like very quickly, like they get the hang of things very quickly, and they're kind of like in another like category of their own.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I feel like in that sense, those children or those kids are literally like building their own little empires and creating such huge, already at that young age, such major shifts on the planet. So in that case, I feel like all for you, you know? And then in the case of like, you know, someone who, you know, a child who has, you know, not really, sort of like it's more in the superficial side of it.
Yes.
That I can totally see how that can be definitely detrimental.
Yes. And that's, you know, that's what I wish for the kids that are the up and coming generation, you know, and you know, I'm partly responsible. You know, I have a little baby that I'm going to be responsible for raising and showing her, you know, what it is to be herself and be in her power.
Right.
And like, I don't want her to live and die by the opinion of man. Because if you think about it, if you live on something like, you know, putting your hope in the stock market, well, what does the stock market do every day? It moves up and down on a graph like this every day. So if you're putting your hope and worth in that, you are going to move up and down like this every day. And you need to have a constant baseline, which no matter what happens up here or down here, you are constant. So that's the thing with the kids of the up and coming generations, is that what are they putting their faith and their hope in? And I would hope that themselves, that they're confident in their own power, that they have everything they need right inside, that they don't need my opinion, they don't need their parents' opinion, they don't need their peers' opinion, because they are already in their power.
Oh God, I got chills again when you said that. Yes.
So true.
Yes.
So true. think about those things. If somebody would have told us that when we were younger, would we have gone through some of the lessons that we've gone through in our lives? Some of the, I feel like we took on a lot of unnecessary heartache in life because maybe we just didn't get a few things right in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And, and there's also the viewpoint that you had to go through those things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that now there's this whole energy of karma that's changing. And so the lessons, you don't need as many lessons to go through to get to where you need to get to. And that's what I think the shift is that that's why younger and younger people are like waking up, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the proof.
Yeah. I mean, we have kids doing some amazing things, things that, literally changing the world at 12 and 13 years old and sometimes younger, kids that are taking their birthday money and donating it. Like those kids are amazing to have that kind of selfless aspiration at that age, to not wanting to be going out and buying the next toy, but to give it to the greater good, to dig wells for people to have water like that. Those are incredible children. Incredible.
Yeah. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything else that you would like to tell our listeners before we wrap it up, and maybe also where they can find you and where they can get connected to your podcast?
Yeah, of course. No, I mean, it's an ever evolving journey with the podcast and whatnot. In this last Aries moon situation that we had, I took a break off of everything but the episodes. So if you look at my channel, you look at my YouTube channel, you'll see where I have Mineral Monday and Woman Crush Wednesday and Stargazing Saturday. Well, I had to take a break from that because I felt like I was getting bogged down from my true mission here. So all that stuff's a lot of fun and I enjoy putting it together. But my mission here was the episodes. So I had to take a step back and not exhaust myself because it's such me to do that, is to go, balls to the wall for the lack of a better term. And then I'm just like, okay, well, I'm exhausted now. So I had to take a step back. I'm going to come back into some of those things because I think those things are important. And I do think they're education in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
But you can find me pretty much anywhere these days. My YouTube channel, I need to change the name because it's so dang complicated. It's Stacey Jewell / Bejewelled Podcast. You can find me on social media. I'm at the Stacey Jewell for everything. So that at least is consistent. At the Stacey Jewell. My RSS feed is the actual audio podcast. You can find that anywhere. Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, anywhere that you get your podcast, you'll find that. That's Bejewelled on there. Trying to think what else. Connect with me on Twitter. That's where I seem to be the most these days because that's where our community kind of hangs out. It's really easy to share information on Twitter. It's like the easier platform. Instagram, I mean, I'm active there. Used to be active every day, but now it's more like a couple times a week because again, I needed to step back from the things that didn't matter so that I could put quality into what did matter. And so yeah, at the Stacey Jewell, the website is www.thestaceyjewell.com, or you can go to www.bejewelledpod.com. I'm on YouTube, and yeah, I think that's everything.
Awesome. And definitely check out her last podcast. Like I just listened to it. Who did you interview again? I can't remember names.
Yes, no. So that's Robert Bonomo, and he directed and he wrote the 21 Faces of God documentary. And basically that is a 2.5-hour journey through the tarot, the Rider-Waite tarot, and the major arcana. So I know that most of the people on your channel are well versed in tarot.
Yes.
So, but if you don't know tarot and you're really wanting to learn more of the historical origins, this documentary is great. So I recommend that. It's free on YouTube. Robert is a wonderful guy. He was so fun to talk to. So yeah, there's something for everybody on the podcast. That's kind of what I like about keeping it alternative media and not putting it in a box.
Yes, no, I love that. But that was great. And that the reason I was recommending that is because my channel is like tarot is like what I do. I do this and all this stuff. So you guys, I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to probably go watch it maybe tonight.
Yes.
And check it out because I'm excited to see someone like created something that has to do with the tarot, but it's so different than what I've ever seen before. Like usually I'll read books, but I've never seen someone actually like make a documentary about it. That's so
yes. And the imagery and the music to blend it together are absolutely beautiful. that's my favorite part of it. It'll be your favorite part too.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining us live tonight.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Those of you guys that are watching the replay, thank you for watching the replay, and please share this video out with your friends. You can text it, send it on social media, so we get the word out. And that's really how in this world and this age, we get the message across. It's by sharing it ourselves. So
Yes.
I know for a fact that that's really what creates, like the community that creates when we do these things is what really matters. That's like the most important. And we're also welcoming in new suggestions for future topics. And also because we have started, bringing guests into the podcast, that I'm open to suggestions on people that you would maybe like us to interview on the podcast. And we can always try reaching out. And you can also, if you're watching the replay, you can put those suggestions in the comments. And if you haven't checked out our previous episodes, if you're like just landing on this for the first time, make sure you check them out. I actually have a playlist on the channel that's called Conversations with Spirits. And I hope everyone has an amazing night. Just a couple announcements before we leave. Next week, there's not going to be a Conversations with Spirit, and then there won't be one until I get back from Argentina, just to let you guys know. And then remember that the Intuition Masterclass that I am hosting this Saturday and the Portals of Awakening Masterclass that I'm hosting next week are they're still open for enrollment. So if you guys haven't checked that out, the link is in the description of this video. So I hope you guys have an amazing night, and we will see you again next time.
Thank you so much, everybody.